Hi guys, Carter here, coming to you with another tutorial about modifying your aircraft. Specifically in this tutorial we are going to be looking at the Flight Factor A320 and we're going to be looking at adding in the JAR design A320 Neo engines and the Toliss A319 Sharklets so you get this beautiful looking plane. So what we're going to do in this video, we're going to split this into three sections. The first section, we're going to look at actually adding in the engines and modifying them and getting them to work. The second part of this section, we're going to look at getting the Sharklets working and putting them all together onto this plane, and then finish that off with a bit of a test within X-Plane. The third section is kind of like an extra special thing on top of it. I'm going to take a little bit of time just to go into putting the Neo engines onto the Toliss A319 as well. So if you want to stick around for that as well, be sure to look at it. This tutorial has actually been asked for a few times. Some of the information that I left on the V1 Discord has been a bit confusing for people, so they've asked for this. So I'm going to put this together. This mod as a whole has kind of been around for a while now. There was a topic on the forums about this that kind of give you a brief sort of beginning into it. Sort of you put the engine on and it shows you how to do the reversers, but it doesn't really give you any information about how to fix the fan blades that wouldn't work properly. So this tutorial is going to do that, at least the first part of it is going to do that. The Sharklet mod, which we're going to do in the second part of this, is also on there, and this gives you some information. There's it for the majority of people it's worked, but there have been a few glitches in how the flex has worked. So this goes into a bit more depth on how to fix some of the flex and some of the lights, specifically like the strobe lights and everything. This mod you will need to download because there are some files within it that you will need later on, so definitely download it. The last thing I will say is if you haven't already gone and looked at them, go and check out FD Plus's Neo sound pack. It does merge, and you can merge it with the BSS sound pack, so you can have both running, but it is a really good sound pack. It is going to blow your mind and your immersion level when you use it, so if you're going to use this mod, I highly recommend going and subscribing to his Patreon and getting access to this as well as all of his other sound packs. It is really good. So stick around and we're going to get straight into modding this plane. Alright guys, so the first part of this is just going to be the engine mod. So if you've already got the engine working and you're just looking for the Sharklet, you're going to have to fast forward because I'm going to leave that for the second half of the video. The first part is just how to get the engines actually put onto the A320. You're going to need to go to your X-Plane folder and go into your aircraft and find your Flight Factor base folder. I have it renamed here, but it'll probably be a different name to yourself. You're just going to need to make a copy of this and paste it and just let it copy. While that is doing that, you're going to need to copy your files of the engine, the JAR design engine. You're going to need these sets of files. So you're going to need the PW1000G underscore 1, 1 normal, 2 and 2 underscore normal, and the required textures. They will all be found within the object folder for the JAR A320. So you're going to need to have these. And what we're going to do is when this is finished, we're going to need to copy these into the object files. Now, like my other tutorial, I prefer putting these into a subfolder within the objects, so it makes it easy to find and it just makes things easier, life easier when you're editing these sort of stuff. So best thing to do is just to create a folder, a subfolder within your objects folder. You can just call it PW space engines is what I've done in the past, and then you're just going to need to place all of these objects into that folder. The other thing you can also do is you can change the name. Like I've done before up here, I just change it to the type of aircraft. It's entirely up to yourself what you want to call it. It just makes it easier to see within X-Plane when you're selecting the plane, so I've just named it something that is easier to stand out. So like I said, go into Objects, and you're going to need to create a new folder. Go into that folder and then just copy and paste those into there. The other thing you're going to need to do is the engine 1000G_2. If you want to change that name to just ENG 320 Tango, this is the same name that is used for the engine, the basic engine for the Flight Factor ENG32T. I just do that because I've had some issues where I've not done it that way, where it doesn't load the plane properly, so I just like to have the base model or the base object as the same name as the engine. That I have read somewhere that doesn't happen to everyone, but in my experience that's happened to me a couple times, and that's fixed it in the past. So it's not a big one, but it's up to you if you want to do that or not. I just did that for mine. So I've renamed that, and so the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to edit some of these objects. Now, I use Notepad++ because it's a lot easier to see coding rather than Notepad. You can see the line number, and it just makes things a lot easier to see things. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit the PW1000G1 and PWG_1_normal. These two files aren't the actual base model, they're actually the outer shell of the engines, and they contain a couple of animations that need to be edited, mainly the reversers for the outer shell. So we're going to need to edit these in our notepad. So if you want to open these both, and what we're going to need to do is just scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you will see a couple of animations. All these animations do are just like the sliding door effect for the reverse thrusters, so it just pushes them back. So FlightFactor uses different data refs to the basic laminar data refs, so we need to change these. So all these are actually doing is just they're triggers for the animation. So you need to replace these with the data refs used by FlightFactor, which I have included within a text file that you can download in the description, which gives you all the information, not just for this, for other things in the video. So we need to replace these. So first thing I want to make sure you're aware of is, you'll see this a lot throughout the video, is these brackets and a number. These brackets and number are a reference to an array within that data ref, and the array references the different engines. So 0 and 1 are the two different engines within your plane. If you're using a plane with two engines, they're just 0 and 1 usually. In terms of Flight Factor and the A320, 0 is going to be your left engine and 1 is going to be your right engine. And you need to keep that in mind because you're going to need to replace them with data refs that are not the same, they don't use arrays. So you need to make sure you're aware of that. So what we're going to need to do is, I have the document that I've provided here, and we're going to need to replace anything with a 0 at the end with this data ref, and this is the left reverser. So you can see here the 0 one here, we just replace that and replace that one. And for the other one here, we just need to replace the engine underscore reversers right, which is the 0, the 1 in the bracket, and we're just going to replace those two. So that replaces the data ref. There's nothing else you need to do on these. You need to also do the same for the normal object as well. They'll have the same animations as the one, so you're going to have to go in and replace these as well. So we just go and replace those. And like before, we'll just replace the left engines, like so. And then you want to go and save both of them. So that's the first part. And that fixes the reversers for the first two objects, which is the outer shell. The next two, the 02 and the underscore 2 and underscore 2 normal, NML, we're going to need to open those up as well, and we're going to do a bit more changes. There's a bit more animations in these two, because these are the fan blades and a bit of reversers in them as well, so we're going to need to change these. So if I open up both ENG320, which is the one I renamed, and the normal. So what we're going to do, if we scroll down, and we get to there. So this is where it starts. So once we've gotten to the right place, as you can see, there's going to be a bunch of animations. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at fixing the reversers. So we've got the reverse animations all working for the engine. So what you're going to need to do is you can just find and replace, which I find is just the easiest thing, because then you don't have to go and spend a huge amount of time replacing everything. So in the text file that I have provided, you can just copy and paste the previous left data ref, and then paste the right one. Paste the left engine, and then just replace all, and you'll see it's replaced. And if we find the changes made, if you scroll down, you can see here we've changed all these data refs. You also see that we have the right ones here that haven't been changed yet, just the left ones. So we are going to need to go and change all of the right ones now. So if we just go back up to here, and then we can just replace the right ones. You can either copy and paste, or just change that to 1 and change the last letter there to right, and then just replace all, and we've replaced the rest of them. So that pretty much changes all of the reversers. That's all you're going to need to do to get the reverse animations to work, and then you can save that, just so you've got that configured. So next what we're going to do, we're going to look at the fan blades. So guys, I just wanted to take a minute or so just to go through what all of these are doing related to the fan blades. So as you can see, the first 4 animation blocks here, these 4 animation blocks are referring to what the middle dome of the engines are doing. So when I say the middle dome, for a lack of better term, it's just like the dome in the middle of the fan blades, not the actual fan blades themselves, just the middle part. And all this is doing is doing 2 things. So these 2 here is just the base default rotation of the middle dome, and then these 2 here are a slightly faster texture animation that appears at a certain point. And then it just replaces the object. So when you get to a certain N1 rotation, it just gets replaced with it, and then you get a faster looking material that's still spinning as well. And that's pretty much what all of these animations are doing. So the ones further down are more related to the actual fan blades themselves. The basic fan blades are here. These 2 sets of fan blades right at the bottom. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, these 2 big blades are actually the blades that are sitting there when you first load the plane up. They're the ones you actually see the blades themselves. And they are also set with a rotation as well. and they hide as well at a certain point. So when you get to a certain N1 rotation, it will just remove them. And then the other ones, if you scroll back up here, the other fan blades then kick in. Namely these two. These two start off. You can see in the animation hide, which I have shown in a previous tutorial video of what it does. It pretty much just hides the animation of the object until required. In this instance, it's using the N1 information, data ref, to provide the information to tell the object when it needs to be hidden and when it needs to be shown on screen. So currently it's been set to anything above 2 N1, and between 2 and 15 it will show the object. And this is for both the left and the right engine. And if we scroll down, you can see that there are other hide animations for the other part. So pretty much what happens is when you start the plane up, you have the basic fans that are not moving. You start the engines up, they start rotating to a certain point, a certain N1 rotation, and then when it gets to that point, it then removes those blades and then puts in a faster blade animation that's spinning. And then when that gets to an even higher N1, it then replaces it with another animation of an even faster looking one, and so forth and so forth. And there's about 3 different fast animations that it goes through depending on the N1 level that you're at. And what we're going to do, we're going to need to edit each of these animations. The rotation just needs to be edited to a different rotation animation that I provided. What we're going to need to do to get the actual rotation working is we're going to need to do a couple things. So if we go back to the text file that I have provided the actual changes required. These need to be added into each rotation animation, but we need to edit them slightly. So as I've showed you before, you've got the left engine and you've got the right animation, and we need to replace the rotation animation with that. So what we need to do, and this is what I normally do, I would just make a new line, go to the text file I have here. This is the right engine because it has 1 within the brackets, 0 is left. So I take the right and I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste that underneath the rotation animation. What you're going to need to do is these three numbers here are the X, Y, and Z location of where the rotation. So it's like the middle point of where the rotation is going to spin. And if you don't have those configured, then you'll find that the rotation of the blades tends to be a bit wonky. It tends to move weirdly. So you need to copy and paste that rotation, those X, Y, and Z, and then just override where I put X, Y, and Z. So you have that there. And then all you need to do is either hash that out or you can delete that line if you don't need it. If you don't want to see it in there, you can just delete it or you can hash it out and that will do the same thing. I just keep it in there just so I have it for reference in the future if I ever need it. So that is pretty much what you got to do for every single one. You've just got to make sure that the rotation animation has to change depending on the side of engine, whether it is the left or it is the right engine. So I've done the right engine. I'm going to do the left one for you. So the left one here, take that, add a new line under the left, copy and paste the rotate there, and then hash that out. So that does the left and the right. And then all you got to do is just got to do the same for every other animation you have here that has a data ref of engine rotation angle degree with either 0 or 1, with the 1 being right and the 0 being left, and then you're just going to make sure you've got the right animations associated, and then you're copying and pasting the X, Y, and Z location and then hashing that out. So you've got to do that for all of these all the way up to your rotation. So as soon as you get to the tube 001, those are the ones you need to do. There are, I think, 4 more you need to do that are listed right at the bottom here. If you scroll all the way down, there's another 4 more here. These ones are actually the blades. So you've got a small blade, which is like the smaller N2 blade, and then you've got the bigger end blades. And they both rotate, and you need to change the animations like above again. So again, you just need to hash that out, copy your rotation underneath, copy your XYZ to the new animation, and then you're done. If you've done all this, great. So I'll be back in a second when I finish doing all of these as well, because I'm not going to do it all on the screen for you. Right guys, so we're back and I have completed changing all of the animations for the rotation, whether it is the N1 blade, the smaller N2 blades, or the middle dome that sits in the middle of the engines. They're all changed now. As you can see, I've hashed out all of the anime rotate. Make sure you're hashing those out and you're not doing it to the anime trans. You need to keep that there. And then you just have the rotation begin, keys, and the end on every single one. I've done that for all of them, and if you scroll down to the bottom, I have then done the same for the 4 at the bottom here. So what you're going to need to do now is we need to save this. So guys, one other thing I think is beneficial to change. Some people don't have it changed, so I thought it'd be good to show you as well. So like I was talking about before, the animation hides parts of the fan on spool up. These can be a bit problematic, and they don't really show you all the animations. It just kind of goes straight to fast, and then it's not great. So we need to do some edits of some of these hides. So like I said before, the first 2, this one here for the right and this one for the left, which is the middle dome, that hides them at a particular point from 2.0 N1. We want to just bump that up, so I'm just going to move that to 22. So after it gets to an N1 of 22, that animation just hides. So that's the first part. These 2, there's no animation hide, so you can just leave them as they are. We scroll down, the next 2, the left and the right. So what we're going to do with these 2 is we're just going to need to change some of the animations. So the animations here, these are the fast domes or the fast N1 blades. We're going to want to change the animations. I like to have these show up after 22 because I like to see the fans before I push the throttles up. So usually the N1 sort of settles around 19 or 20. So it just means that at an idle movement on the ground, the fans are going to be showing, and then they don't change over to the faster fan animations until you move the throttles up and go above 22 N1. So I like to use 22, and then I'm going to hide them at about 35, and I'm going to do this for each of them. So 35, 22 to 35. And then the one below here, we're going to move these ones from 35 to 60. 35 and 60. So these ones are going to show up when the fans are even faster. So when you move them up, you spool them up above 22 and you keep pushing them forward, and when they get to about 35 N1, the faster spool will show up, and they will then hide at about 60. So we want to change this one here to then to be 60. And these ones below here to be 35. So these two are actually the fan blades themselves. These are actually the fast fan blades. So what is going to happen here is a normal spin. The fans are going to move. They're going to move. You can see the normal N1 fan blades move up until the spool up time of 20, 21 or something like that. And they're going to sit there and just spin. And then when you start moving the throttle up, when it gets above 22 N1, these two animations are going to hide, and then at 22, this animation and this animation are then going to appear, and they're going to just appear there between 22 N1 and 35 N1. And as you push the throttles up even more, when we get above 35, they're going to disappear again after 35, and then at 35 the next set of fast animations, so it's just an even faster animations, are going to show up, and they're going to sit there until we get above 60 N1. And the two below here are the actual fast end blades, and they're just going to hide at a certain point. So when you get to 60 or 35, anything above that, they are just going to show, and they're just going to stay there until you move the throttles back. So these two here are just higher. So after 35, these will show up until 60 at 35, and then at 60 these are going to show up. So that's what you need to change there. We need to go scroll all the way down to the actual normal fan blades, which are these two here. These are the actual N1 blades at an idle, and we're just going to need to change those to 22 as well. We need to do the same on the PW100G and just go to normal. Now they both have the same animation, so what I just do is I just copy all of the animation up to there, and then I just go all the way back here and I just copy and override everything, so I don't have to spend a huge amount of time doing what I did before, and then I just save that, and that will save the engines with the correct data references and the animations that you need to have the engines rotate. So what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to add these engines into our plane now. So this is where you're going to need to open up Plane Maker to get this to work. Alright guys, if we open up Playmaker here, and if we open up our new copy, just rescan, and we want to edit the A320.acf file, and we're just going to open this up. It'll take a minute or so to open up. There are a couple things. If you've never used PlaneMaker before, there are a few controls that you need to get used to. So if you want to zoom in, there is a minus and plus button that's next to your backspace. You can use those to move in, zoom in and zoom out, like so. If you hold shift, it makes it go faster. The other thing, if you want to just rotate the plane, this is using the AD for your pan, and then your S and W just to move it up and down. And then if you want to move from side to side, then you use your arrow keys to move up and down. And those are the keys you are to just move around. So the first thing you need to do is when you've opened up your plane, a lot of you won't have the animations moving. I just have them there just to see some animations that are working. You can turn that on and off by going into the specials and just doing the show with still and moving controls. So you'll see something like this where there's no movement and animation. So first thing we need to do is we need to go to the objects, and then we just need to remove the shadow inside so we can actually see the plane. It's not going to remove it from the actual object or anything, it's just going to hide it so we don't see it because it tends to be in the way half the time. So what we're going to need to do is there are a couple of things we need to change. So first of all, we need to go to the standard. First of all, let me maximize this so you can see a bit better. So if we go to the miscellaneous objects, you'll see here that we have all of the objects that are associated with the A320, and we need to change a few things. First of all, we're going to need to go and find the ENG 320.object. ENG 320T.object. This here. So we're not going to delete it, we're just going to change the location. So if we just click on this box here that's next to the name, it'll open up a list of objects that are in the object or in your plane. So we just need to do scroll down and then open up the PW engine folder that we have added, and then just open up the engine 320T.object and just open that. And as you can see, we just close this. It has replaced the engine with the first part of the actual engine, the PW engine here. There are a few things we need to do here first. So we need to remove one object that is still there that we don't need, that is related to the original 320 engine. So we scroll down and find the engine fast. We don't need that, so you can just click the clear button and remove it. All that was it's just the fan blades that sat within the old engine. So it would have been there. So what we need to do next is we need to change the location of this. I included in the text file, I will provide the location, engine location. So if you just copy this here, so it's 60 minus 7 minus 200. So we go back to the engine object, which is here, and then we just add in the information here. So 60 would go into the first box, minus 7, and then minus 200. So we go 60 minus 7 and minus 200. And if we have a look again here, you can see we've now moved it into a more suitable position that looks more like what the engine would be sitting, or the location the engine would be sitting. So once we got the location, we need to add in 3 more objects to the bottom. So we're just going to need to add 1, 2, 3. And on the 3 objects, I'm just going to copy and paste the kill data ref, because these are external models. They're just going to be added to the kill data ref. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open up the PW1000G_2NL first. To open that, we're going to open up the 1 object and then the normal for that 1 object as well. As you can see, the engines have appeared, or the outside of the engines. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to change the location again to the same as what we set for the ENG 320 T.object. So that's going to be again 60 minus 7 and minus 200, and we need to do it for each of them. Like so. And as you can see, we now have our engines that look in the correct position. The final thing we need to do is we go back to the miscellaneous objects is we just want to change the shadow. So if we add in all views, this just makes sure that the engines are creating a shadow when you look out the window, whether it is inside the plane or whether you're outside, it's going to create a shadow. So you want to add those into there. So now we have added the engines in. That is pretty much everything you're going to need to do. There are some minor stuff that you can do on the ACF file that I prefer to turn on. So first thing is I want to do is I just want to go to the expert and then invisible parts. So expert and invisible parts, and I'm just going to turn on the built-in engine effects, and then press the X there. And then I want to go into standard, engine specs, and I'm just going to change a few things here. So I want to turn on the reversers available. I want to then change the compressor area to 5.2 and the reversers to 2.6. And that's pretty much all we need to do. This really isn't going to have a huge impact on the reversers or a lot. It will make the heat blur behind the engine a bit more visible. Bigger and visible. It tends to be quite small, so it just adds to the heat blur, and then it's also, I think it also adds a bit more of a stream to the back of the engine while you're in flight. So I prefer to turn those on. So you can turn those on, you don't have to, you can just leave them as they are. So yeah, so once you've done that, you can save that, and we can then quit this, and then we can test. So guys, when you've loaded into X-Plane and you are selecting your plane, like so, the best thing to do is to make sure you start with the engines running. It just makes things easier. You can see what the engines are doing, and you don't need to wait to start them up. It is entirely up to yourself. I just have the engines running so I can see them, and then I can power them down one at a time and then look what they're doing. So I just start with the engines, and then I'm also going to make sure that I am starting on a runway, just because it's a lot easier to see the plane rather than have it sitting at a terminal and impairing my view with all the objects and the terminal around. So we're just going to start this up here and then see what we see. Alright guys, as you can see, we are now in the FlightFactor A320 in X-Plane, and as you can see, the engines are there and they are functioning. So, as you can see, the engines are turning around like they should, and with the edits we made to the hide, if you then introduced some thrust at a certain level, they will change. You add more thrust, and they change even more. And as you throttle down, they will revert back to spinning N1. So that is pretty much how that works. And just to test the reversers, there's the reverser animation. I will say as well that the engines and the N1, you will need to have the FlightFactor Connect plugin, the connector plugin. If you don't have that, for some reason there is no N1 data ref. For some reason the plugin is used to then get the N1, so you need to have that plugin within your plugins folder, otherwise when the engines spool up, you don't get the change. It just goes instantly to the max fast animation. So bear that in mind. So this is pretty much how to set up the engines. What I will do next is go through the Sharklets, and we'll go from there. So stay tuned. Hi guys, welcome back. We are going to be looking at the Sharklet mod now for the Flight Factor A320. Before we went through all of the steps needed to get the engines working, we're now going to look at the Sharklet mod. So I've kind of split this up between the two. If you've just skipped to this part, then we're just going to look at the Sharklet. If you are looking at the engine, you're going to need to rewind all the way to the beginning, and that'll take you to how to set up the engine. So for the Sharklet mod, the first thing you're going to need to do, and I said at the beginning of the video, you are going to need to go and download the Sharklet mod that was already on the forums. There are a couple of things on there that you're going to need. So inside the zip file, once you've downloaded it, there are a how-to guide. There's some useful information in there. It's going to be a bit different than how I'm going to show you. The two things you're going to need are going to be those two files. And the reason you're going to need these two files is because they are a masked version of parts that are going to be edited out, specifically the Toliss wing and the winglets at the end of the Flight Factor A320 wing that needs to be edited out. So you're going to need those two, and you're going to need to copy those later on when we get to it. The other thing that's in there, if you do any liveries or paint kits, or you need to create normals, because the normals aren't included within this pack, I will try and include them in my little zip file that I'm going to provide, is the paint kits, and they're just masks. So if you know anything about Photoshop, you can just use these to select the black or the white area and then edit out the white or black areas and just keep the spots that you're going to need for your liveries. So they're there if you know anything about Photoshop and do any delivery stuff. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to go and get the wings. Now in this Sharklet mod, this is a bit of an older version, and in this version a lot of people get confused because they go and read it and it says that they need to take just the one wing file from the Toliss pack. Now originally, yes, that was correct because Toliss only had the one wing, but one of the recent updates split the wing into two files. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go into the Toliss folder, and then you're going to need to copy both of those wings. So if you go into the Toliss and you go scroll all the way down, you'll see that there's a wing left, a wing right, and you've got the four files. You're going to need to take the two object files and the normal. The wing left and wing right PNG you're not going to need because they're going to be replaced by this this texture here. We're just going to duplicate. So what we're going to do first of all is we go into the Flight Factor copy that we had as part of our engine, and we go into our objects and we create a new folder called Sharklets. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy the files that we need into here. So if I take that and paste that there, and then if I go back to the Toliss folder and pick out the wing files there, like so, and take those back. Right, there we go. So you got your objects and you've got your wing and the wings normal. The other thing you're going to need from the Toliss pack as well is there's a light external light object that you're going to need to copy as well. We're going to cover, and the external light here is pretty much just what gives you the strobe lights and navigation lights. So you're going to need to find the lights underscore out 319.object, and you're also going to need to find the texture, which is the external lights PNG. So if you take that and the lights and copy that, and you're going to paste that into the same folder as the Sharklet mod folder in your objects, like so. The other thing you want to do is you're going to want to take the Wing 320T and you're going to copy that, and you're going to want to override the one that's in here. I would highly recommend taking a backup of it if you don't already have one. So you're just going to want to override the wing object that's in here. So the first thing we need to do as part of this pack is we're going to need to go into a couple of objects, and we're going to need to turn on and turn off a few hide animations, and then we're going to need to remove a whole load of wing flex operations that cause the two wings to move their different ways, and it makes a bit of glitchiness. So we need to go and remove them so that the Sharklet at the end will move at the same time as the Flight Factor wing. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the Toliss wings first. So if we both edit these files in our text editor, and we scroll all the way down, what we're going to need to find first of all is there are two animation under /shark. So we do a search for ANM/shark. You'll see it here. There's a hide here, and then if we find next, there's another one here. And all we need to do is we just need to flip the values between them. So the first one, as you saw there at the top, is 0, 0. So we need to flip that to be a 1. And then if we go to the next animation, we need to flip that one to be a 0. And all this is doing is it is switching the Toliss's winglet for its Sharklet. So by default, the Toliss's wing will always come up with the winglet at the end. And what we're telling it here is by default, make sure the Sharklet is to appear at all times. So that's pretty much what that is doing. And what we're going to need to do then is we're going to need to find all of the data ref entries in here that refer to the name Wing Lex. I know most of you are screaming now going, don't you mean Wing Flex? Yes and no. Yes, Wing Flex is what we're looking for, but Toliss has spelt it as Wing Lex. It's probably just a typo. But we need to find the word Wing Lex. And as you can see here, Wing Lex is showing up. So when we find them, if we just copy the animation, well, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either remove the data ref at the end, or you can completely delete the line, the rotation line. I have just deleted the line in the past and it's worked perfectly fine. So you can go and just delete that entire line, or we can just delete the data reference. And all that means is there's nothing's going to call that rotation, so nothing's going to happen. So we just go and do a replace, and we just find that, and then just change it to none, and just replace it for all, and it'll just replace the animation /winglets for none for all of it, and then we can save that. We're going to want to go into the wing right, and we're going to do exactly the same as what we did before. Is we're going to first find the hide /shark, or the hide animation, which is labeled as anime /shark, and then we're just going to flip the hide numbers around so that they are the other way around, so the Sharklet is going to be showing by default. Like so. Then what we're going to need to do is we do the same again, and we're just going to replace the winglets with none again. So just replace them all. And then we're going to save that. And that pretty much is all you're going to need to do is those wings. So the wings are done there. The other thing I would suggest is the wings.png that you're going to need to make a copy of. And we're going to need to change the names to wing L and wing right. They're exactly the same textures, they're just some of the stuff is used within one object and others are not in the others, but they're exactly the same object used for both. So if you ever do a livery, you only need to do one, then you just need to duplicate it, and then just change the names to left and right. The normal just stays the same because both the objects refer to the single normal, but each object then refers to its own texture. So that's there. The lights out we're going to come back to later on, once we've done all of the changes to the wing flex, because there's a bit more to that. So what we're going to need to do now, once we've done the two Toliss wings, we're going to need to go into the objects. There are a couple of objects we need to go and change. So first of all, we need to do the actual wing. So we go and find the wing and then add that into there. We're going to also want to open up the glass 320T, if I can find it, glass 320. We're also going to want to open up the, we go back one to the main folder, we're going to need to open up the A320 cockpit object file, and then finally we're going to want to open up in the objects folder the external lights. So it's going to be lights underscore external. And these four files, we're going to need to change some of the flex information and some of the strobes. So what we're going to need to do first is in the wing 320T object, we're going to need to go and find all the flex, and then we're going to change them to none, much like we did in the wing left and the wing right. So if we find the flex, anything called flex, as you can see here, we're going to need to replace any flex underscore left and flex underscore right with a none. So first we're just going to copy that and we're going to replace that with a none, and then we're going to change that to an R and then replace that, and it's the same thing. So that fixes the wing. So we're going to save that and we're going to go to the glass and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find the flex animations and then we're just going to replace them with the word none. And we'll do the same for the right flex animations and replace that. And then in the cockpit we're also going to need to do the same. So if we find there are a couple of flex animations in here, so we just replace that with none, and then replace the left ones with none, and then we save that. In the lights one, there are a couple of flex animations in here that needs to be removed, so we need to do the same here. So remove that, and then remove the right one. The final thing you're going to need to do in the lights one before you do anything is there are a couple of lights that we need to remove that are not required, and these are specifically the strobe lights. So if we do a search for strobe, there are going to be a number of strobe stuff comes on. You got the beacon strobe, which is the navigation lights. You can leave them on or remove them. That is entirely up to yourself. I have left them in just to add a bit more. They tend to be hidden most of the time under some of the wings. They don't really show very much. But the strobes, these strobes here, the one that's called airplane strobe, those ones are the ones we're going to need to edit out. But there is one you need to leave, the one that says strobe light underscore B, which is the strobe light that sits at the back of the plane just underneath the APU. That one you're going to need to leave. So if we just hash, we don't need to hash anything for these ones, but if we find the next strobe, which is the animation strobe, you can see here we've got L1 and L2. Both of these we're just going to need to hash out the actual light animation, like so. And then if we scroll down, there's going to be a R1 and an R2 strobe light that we also need to hash out. So we just hash those, like so. If you want, you can just hash all of it out, because we're not going to need pretty much any of it, because we're going to be using the strobe lights on the Toliss instead, which are going to be actually on the Sharklet itself. So we can just edit all of it out, like so. There we go. And then you're going to want to save that. So that edits out all of the flex requirements. So once we've done all of the flex, we can close those because we no longer need to have them open. And we're going to want to open up the last file that we have in the Sharklet, which is the lights out. So once you've opened up the lights out 319 object, you're going to see a lot of information here. A lot of this is going to be fairly straightforward, as it's fairly decent enough to give you the comments to what each section is doing. So as you can see here, you got your wing lights, your logo lights, your nav lights, and then you've got the nose lights and the wing lights for each side. And then you've got some of the main landing gear lights and some of the beacon lights for the strobe beacons. So we're going to need to edit some of this out, and then we're going to need to keep some of it. So the sections that we are more interested in are within the Sharklet, winglet. These are just the Sharklet and winglets for the left and right wing. So everything outside of that just needs to be hashed out, or we can use the anime hide. So the wings lights at the top, we can just hash all of these out, like so. And the nav lights, we can hash those out, we're not worried. The nose light, what we can do is we can just do an anime underscore hide 0.0, and that will hide everything within that animation begin, including the lights. But just so we're sure that everything is being removed, we can just remove the light parameters from there as well, because we don't need them. We scroll past the wings, we need to remove the landing lights. Again, we can just use the anime hide 0.0 and then just hash out the light parameters to make sure they're not going to stay there, and the same for the other landing gear, landing lights. And hash out the light parameters, and then we just need to hash out the strobe beacon lights. So that just leaves us with these two areas. So these two areas, as I was saying, they are the left wing and the right wing. To start with the left wing, pretty much all this is doing is it starts out with a couple of wing flex animations, and we're going to need to edit out the wing flex animations so they're not going to happen, so that they sync in with the rest of the wing and they're not moving when you're moving the plane or flying. The other thing you're going to need to do is we're going to need, like we did with the wing left and the wing right, we're going to need to switch the animation hide, and then it shows up when we're looking at it in PlayMaker. So if we just remove that and change that, and to make sure that the light parameters are not going to cause any problems, we can hash those out as well. We're going to need to do the same for the right wing, so we hash out the winglets, and then we need to flip the winglets and the Sharklet around. They are the other way around on the right, so don't get confused, because the Sharklet was first and then the winglet, but in the right one it's the winglet first, then the Sharklet. So we just need to change this to 0 and the Sharklet to 1 to make that the active default. And then we can hash out the lights for the winglet, like so. And that is pretty much what you need to do to get the lights working. So we can save that. So now we've edited all the flex animations out, and we've got the lights, all the other lights edited out. We've got the correct lights and none of the flex within these lights. So now we're going to go on Open Playmaker, and then we're going to open up our previous modification of the Flight Factor, and we're going to add in the Sharklet mod now with all these edited files that we've completed. So I'll be back in a second once I've opened Playmaker. So guys, here we are now with Playmaker open with our original modification of the Flight Factor 320 that we did before earlier in the video for the engines. So if you didn't have it open before, or you close it down and you bring it open again, you just need to go back into your visualization and just hide the shadow inside, and that'll get rid of the shadow of that object. It makes it very difficult to see the actual plane. So let's get rid of that. And as you can see, it's pretty much the same as it is. You can see there's going to be a slight difference, mainly at the end of the wing, because the actual winglet that was there before has now been edited out. So don't be alarmed by that. That's just what the textures that come with the mod do. So what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to go into the miscellaneous objects within the standard. I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to need to add in the 2 wings. So we just add 2 new entries. Make sure to copy the kill data refs, and we're just going to go and scroll down and find the Sharklet folder, and then open the left. And if we scroll down, we need to open up the right one as well. And as you can see, they're now appeared there. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set the location. So the location I have included on the text file I'm going to provide. The first figure, which is going to be the first one, is going to be 02063. The middle one you can ignore, and then it's going to be minus 55 for both. So we just put those figures in. So 2, 6, 3, and then minus 55, 2, 6, 3, and then minus 55, like so. You're also going to want to change the shadows, so you've got the shadows to all views, and as you can see, we scroll in, the wings have now, the winglets or the Sharklets have now been added to the end of the wing, and they look pretty perfectly aligned. That's great. So the final thing we need to do there as well is we need to add in the strobe lights. So we're going to need to add another option to the bottom, copy the data ref, and then open up the lights out 319 and then open, like so. And we're just going to need to add in the location, like the same as above. We don't need to set the shadow because these are lights. There is no need for the shadow, so you can leave that as none. The final thing you want to do, just to check to see that all your animations are working properly, is we can then go and just do this. As you can see, there's a bit of flex still there on the wing. That's probably because we didn't remove the actual rotation. All we did is just edit out the references. So even though the animations do show in here, they may not show when you actually load up X-plane. So don't be alarmed if you do that and you see a bit of flex here. So we can go ahead and save that. And then what we're going to need to do now is we're going to go and test this out in X-plane. So give me a moment and I will load up X-plane and we'll see what it's like in X-plane. So the final thing we need to do there as well is we need to add in the strobe lights. So we're going to need to add another option to the bottom, copy the data ref, and then open up the lights out 319 and then open like so. And we're just going to need to add in the location like the same as above. We don't need to set the shadow because these are lights. There is no need for the shadow, so you can leave that as none. The final thing you want to do, just to check to see that all your animations are working properly, is we can then go and just do this. As you can see, there's a bit of flex still there on the wing. That's probably because we didn't remove the actual rotation. All we did is just edit out the references. So even though the animations do show in here, they may not show when you actually load up X-plane. So don't be alarmed if you do that and you see a bit of flex here. So we can go ahead and save that. And then what we're going to need to do now is we're going to go and test this out in X-plane. So give me a moment and I will load up X-plane and we'll see what it's like in X-plane. Alright guys, here we are back in X-plane and we have our fully modified Flight Factor A320 with the Neo engines and the Sharklet mod, as you can see. And we have a quick look around. We can see that the winglet is in the correct position, Sharklets, everything is in the correct position and looks flush to the plane. So what I also want to try and do just before we get into just testing some of the flex, I want to change to a different night cycle, mainly just so that I can see what the lighting is going to be like. I turn on all of the lights. Okay, as you can see, we still have the navigation lights and the strobe lights are working as expected on both ends. It is fantastic. So if we bring the day back, now we know that all the lights are working as expected. What we want to do now is we want to just use the runway to test out the flex. So we're just going to roll off, keep an eye on the outside while keeping the center line, and then we're just going to take off, and then we're just going to monitor the Sharklets to make sure that there's no wing flex going on with animation glitches. So we hop in and release the parking brake, and then take us to outside view, and then bring up the engine power. So as we are rolling down the runway, when we get to a certain thing, it might be just an idea just to give yourself a bit of a swing from side to side, see whether you can get the wings to sort of move a little bit. Create any glitches, which I'm not seeing anything here, so it looks all good from a taxiing point of view. So if we carry on and then take the plane off, what we're looking to find, just no glitching. Alright guys, we're back outside of X-Plane now to finish up this part of the video. Just to bring it all to the conclusion, now we have the Neo mod working from the beginning part of the video, and we've ended this part of the video with how to get the Sharklets working on there, and we've combined them all and we've tested it in X-Plane and everything works, and that's pretty much all you're going to need to do to get this mod to function correctly. You are free to go now, or if you wish, you can stick around and we're going to take a look at adding these engines onto the Toliss A319. So stick around. Hey guys, welcome back for part 3 of this tutorial video. This is going to be a little bit of a special extra bit. The main tutorial was for the Flight Factor, but I thought it'd be nice to have an extra bit about how to add these engines to the Airbus A319, the Toliss specifically. This is going to be a lot easier. There is not so much animation changes as is going to be needed. We don't need to put Sharklets on, so it's going to be a fairly fast one. So let's get straight into it. So what we are going to need to do is we're going to need to make a copy again of our Toliss. I've already done this to save time, so I've got a copy of it here, and what we're going to need to do is go straight into the objects, and we're going to need to create a new folder. And the folder again is going to be called PW Engines. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the engines from our JAR design folder, and then we're just going to paste it into our engine folder within Toliss. Now, I said you don't need to edit any of these files for this to work, and that is entirely true. You don't need to have any editing of this to work. You just need to add them into Playmaker and it will work perfectly fine. What I prefer to do is still edit the hide animations, just because it makes things easier, and I like to see the fan blades at an idle thrust on the ground. So if we go and edit the objects again, scroll down, and we're going to find the first hide animations here for N1, and we're just going to change these to 22. So they hide at 22 N1, and these 22, this is going to be 35, 22, 35. Then the next ones we're going to go from 35 to 60. And these ones are going to be 35 and 60. And then these two here are just going to be 35, sorry, 35, 35, sorry, no, these ones are actually 60, and the 15 are 35. 35, like so. And then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're just going to change the N1 fan blades to the 2 hide at 22. And then we just need to open up the PW 1000G to normal and just copy and paste the animations like we did in the previous videos. So if we scroll and copy all of that and paste that. Like so. And save that and save that. So like I said, that is the extent of how much editing of these objects that you're going to need to do, and even that you don't need to do if you do not want to. So that is entirely up to yourself. So once you've edited those, if you choose to edit them or not, we are going to then jump into Playmaker. So I have Playmaker already open here, so if I jump in and then we load up the aircraft that we've just copied there. So if we go to the copy, open that, and then we have our Toliss open. I'm just going to turn off the animations, and what we're going to do, you won't see the engines because they have hide settings turned on in the actual objects. So we're going to need to go to the objects, and we're going to find our engine, which is going to be labeled as engines.object. And like we have done in the previous ones, I'm just going to change the name of the main engine, the PW1000G_2, to engines. And I'm going to re-reference those under the PW engines into my under my Toliss folder, and open that. And you can see there it's showing up there. And if I zoom in, all we just need to do is just move the location. I have actually provided the location in the text file that I'm going to provide, which is going to be 100 and then all zeros and then minus 50. So the first object is always going to be 100. Like it says here, 100. This one is going to be 0, and then this one's going to be minus 150, like so. So it matches that location there. And if we take a look, you can see there it's pretty flush with the wing there. Okay, so once we've changed the location of the engine object, we are going to add in another 3 more objects. We're going to copy the engine data ref, like so, and we're going to add in all the other objects within that folder. So if we just open all these, normal and normal, and we're just going to match the same location that we have set up for the original engine, which is 100 and all zeros for the second, and then minus 150. We're also going to change the shadow mode just for the object 1. We don't need to do it for the normals, so it's all views. And as you can see here, engines have been placed on the Toliss. And that is pretty much the extent of what you actually need to do to get this to work. So we can go ahead and save that. If you do want to have the Sharklets working instead of this, then any livery that you set up, you just need to have the brackets, the closed brackets with the CFM or IE with the T, I believe, at the end, and the S is for the SATCOM dome at the top there. It's one of those two, but you need to have that to have the Sharklet mode, or you can set it from the settings when you load in. So we've saved that, and if I load up X-Plane and we can have a test that that is all working, we'll be back in a minute. Hi guys, here we are back in X-Plane, and here we have a fully modified Toliss A319 with the JAR Neo engine, and it has done a lot of nice. As you can see, the engines are spinning. As you can see, we're seeing this because of the modifications I did to the PW1, PW2 engine text file for changing the hides. If we increase the throttle, we'll see that change. As you can see, it is all working, and if we try the reverse thrust, that is all working as well. And as a final thing, we can just turn off the engines here. And the fan blades will slow down and ultimately stop after a while. The A319 fans tend to stop a little quicker than the A320 just because of the different types of animations, so this is normal if they stop quicker than the other ones, but that's pretty much, that's it. That's all configured. It's actually a lot easier to configure the Toliss A319 than it is going to be the FlightFactor. Alright guys, so that is pretty much it. We have, throughout the video, gone through all the steps you need to modify the JAR design Neo engine on the Flight Factor A320. We've gone through all the Sharklet information about how to add that as well, and editing all the objects, and we finished it off there with a last piece, special piece about how to add the engines to the A319 as well. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you do have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below, or you can try and hit me up on the Discord and I'll try and answer them. Alright guys, have fun.